We hatch them, we dispatch them. That's a crude description of a priest's job. We hatch them. Well, priests don't actually give birth or help in the childbearing process, but we're there on either side. I try to get to an expectant couple before the delivery comes and to pray with them, and even more often to be with them and their newborn baby right after the baby is born. And I've got to tell you, the faces of that new couple, the father and especially the mother, are just radiant. They're just glowing. Now I can hardly imagine that maybe the mother is glowing because she's so happy that childbirth is over. But there's more. As she looks down at that little bundle of God's infinite love, her face just radiates as she thinks about what this new life has in store for her. Did I say her face glowed? I think I did. We matched them. Yes, one of the great life cycle events that priests are invited into are weddings. And I meet with couples before their wedding to talk about where they've come from and who they are now, and especially where their mutual journey is going to take them. I've got to tell you that I've conducted literally scores, well, literally dozens, if not scores, of weddings. And in those weddings, I've been privy to the most drop-dead beautiful gowns and tuxes and music and flowers. I got to tell you the truth. I don't remember any one of those. But something is etched indelibly on my mind. And that's the face of that man and that woman standing before me, just radiant. Whether or not it's the first time they're married or not, as they exchange vows, they just become glowing. I will love you, honor you, keep you in sickness and in health. And forsaking all others, I will be faithful to you as long as you both shall live. All of newlywed couples, they just glow with God's radiance. And we dispatch them. Yes, funerals are another occasion where priests are welcomed, where priests belong. And I've got to tell you, believe it or not, that through the tears, invariably at a funeral, I can see a face beaming, maybe in a subdued way, as that person is grieving about the loss of their precious dear one, but are reassured that for them, life has changed, but not ended. Now, Moses had been married a long time, and I don't think he and his wife were expecting a child, and I don't think he was grieving over the loss of a loved one. But his face was absolutely shining. It was glowing. He had been up on Mount Sinai, where God had given him the tablets of law, the 10 Commandments, the stone tablets. And as he brought that back down to his people, his face was shining so much they were ready to go close to him. Now, the Torah is not like the little manual that we study to get our driver's license. The Torah is law, but it's more than law. The Torah is instruction, but it's more than instruction. The Torah is a way for people to live in right relationship to God. And so when Moses brought this life-giving law to the people, he absolutely glowed. His face glowed at the new life that he and the Jews were going to have. I think a similar thing happened to Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. You know, there are a lot of explanations for that. You've heard me say before that I think Jesus just couldn't contain his divinity anymore. And it burst out of him in a bright light, brighter than any celestial supernova. I still think that. But there's more. Imagine this. Football season has just ended. I know some of you are probably saying, thank goodness it lasts. But imagine a football game up on the Mount of Transfiguration. And God is the coach, and his son Jesus is the star quarterback. And during the game, Jesus calls a timeout. And he goes over to talk to a couple of the assistant coaches, Elijah and Moses. You remember Moses was the lawgiver. And Jesus said, I just want to check one thing. Does the playbook really say that I've come not to abolish the law that you brought Moses, but to fulfill it? And when they assure him of that, then he goes back into the game and shines with all the brightness it could be. And Jesus did fulfill that Mosaic law for his disciples long ago and for us today. He gave them and us the great commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your soul, and all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And then he gave us the great commission. Go forth and make disciples of all the nations. Now, there is an optional piece in today's gospel. And I chose to read it, even though it would make the service considerably longer, because it has everything to do with our ministry here in St. Martin's. In that portion of the gospel, you'll remember, this is after Jesus and John and James had come down from the mountaintop. Remember, those three disciples of his had just witnessed all of the glory of Jesus. And when they're asked to heal a young man, a boy, the father's only son, who is convulsed with seizures, they can't do it. They can't do it, even though they've come down from the mountain and seen all of this power of God. And I will tell you, friends, that every once in a while, our ministry here at St. Martin's will seem to come short of what God's intentions are for us. It's just a wonderful thing to think about God being with us. Jesus and God being with us and empowering us and helping us. In just a few minutes, we're going to retire to the Great Hall for a delicious lunch. I think I can smell it in here already. And then we're going to have our annual meeting. And you know what? We've got a lot to celebrate about. And we'll celebrate in St. Martin's fashion. I've never known a group of people that had more fun than you folks. And it's just a privilege to be with you. We're going to hear that over the past few years, our attendance here has increased by 50%. And yet, I look out at this beautiful nave, and I think we could fit a few more people in. And even when we fill this up, 50, 60, 70 people, we could have an early service, like one, early service communion. So we've got room to grow. At the annual meeting, I don't want for you all to say, well, I've heard the Cliff Notes, I'm not going to go to it. We're going to hear that last year, for the 4th year in a row, or the 3rd year in a row, St. Martin's ended the year in the black. Just by a little bit. What we did, and you know what I think that says? I don't think that says that we were having rough times. I think it says we used all of our resources right up to the edge of the cliff. And we're going to look at the budget that the Bishops' Committee has adopted, and you're going to see it's going to take a lot of hard work to break even and be in the black again next year. But by golly, we're going to do it. This beautiful building, I just love this place. I mean, the first day I came in here when I was being interviewed for the job, I went right back where Becky's sitting and fell on my knees, and I said, this is one beautiful place. And our Great Hall is wonderful, and the backyard is wonderful weddings for New Orleans type weddings with lights and everything. But as you know, we don't have a world-class nursery. We got a little closet that people can change a baby in, but it's certainly not a nursery worth shooting to accommodate the burgeoning number of infants and toddlers that we have among our very members. But also, the impediment not having that nursery is to attracting new young couples. I've had one man say, I'd like to come to your church. Do you have a nursery? I said, no. And he's never shown up. And we lack space for a first-class Sunday school program. And at our meeting, we're going to hear some exciting proposals about how we might go about rectifying that. You know, the Transfiguration took place up on the mountaintop. We like mountaintops, don't we? We like mountaintop experiences. We'd like to live on the mountaintop. But it's not possible, is it? Just like Jesus and his 3 disciples, we have to come back down to the plains and the valleys where our life is conducted. We cannot live up on that mountaintop forever. And sometimes it will seem that we will be as unable to achieve what we want to as those disciples did with that young boy who was experiencing seizures. In today's gospel, we hear up on the Mount of Transfiguration, Jesus, Moses, and Elijah talking about Jesus' imminent departure. In Greek, the word for departure is exodus, from which we get the word Exodus. And Jesus' exodus that's about to occur is going to take him on a darn hard trip. One with pain, in fact, one that will end in death as he goes to Jerusalem and goes up Mount Calvary Hill and is executed on a cross and is laid stone dead in a grave for 3 days. And on the 3rd day, he will rise again to new life for himself and for all his followers, for everyone in the world. Now, to say that all the pain and all the suffering and all the risk that Jesus took on was more than worth it when he was resurrected, well, that's an infinite understatement, isn't it? And the word Exodus reminds us of the Jews' long slog out of slavery in Egypt to the Promised Land. And along the way, they got frustrated. And they got scared. And they wanted to go back. You remember when God gave them manna from heaven? You know what manna was? It was a plant secretion. And when the sun came up, it made it a little crusty, and they could scrape it off, and it was nourishing, but it didn't taste, it tasted worse than baby pattern. Sorry, babies. And they said, we head back in Egypt, at least we had leeks and onions to eat, but they persevered. They went on, and they got to the Promised Land, and they rejoiced in the new life that was there for them. And we will rejoice when we get there in the new life that is there for us. You know, like those disciples, we could be frustrated. Those disciples were only able to heal that young boy in Jesus' presence. And St. Martin's and his members can become one with Jesus' mission and ministry by practicing his presence, by imitating Christ, by being Christ-like here in Pryor and in northeast Oklahoma, imitating him as we proclaim the good news to Pryor and to a whole area that is starving for good news. As we welcome the stranger and those who are not like us, and as we minister to the needy, as we heal the sick in his name. You know, I think if we have the courage to do those things, it might just make Jesus' face glow. It might make our faces glow too.